Welcome back to Stompbox Breakdown. What's on the agenda today? Why, it's none other than Boss's DN-2 DynaDrive. Let's dive right in and see what this thing does. Now, in case it wasn't obvious, it reacts to your playing dynamics. So the harder you play, the more overdrive it adds in. So that whole thing I did with the pedal on, and I was adjusting the level of overdrive just by adjusting how hard I'm hitting the strings. And then later on with the power chords, I was going from like an 8 on the guitar's volume knob up to about a 10. Lets me get this big wide range of overdrive. And perhaps most importantly, it does it on the fly. So you just kind of slide into overdrive instead of being clean signal, clean signal, clean signal, and then all of a sudden full distortion out of nowhere. It gives you just a wider range of overdrive. It's a pretty neat little pedal, and I wanted to do a closer look at this guy because there was a thread about it on the gear page, and people wanted to know what it was all about. This is not your typical drive pedal, and there's no real giveaway in the name or the controls about what it does. So let's take a look at it. Most overdrive pedals are already somewhat reactive to your playing dynamics, and you know that because you can back off on the input, and if your input signal looks like this, it doesn't, but let's pretend it does. If it looks like this, then the clipping diodes will just lop off the top. Let's say that's a hard clipping distortion, for example. And then the higher the input signal, the more the top is getting chopped off, and the more intense the distortion is. In that case, the clipping diodes are the things reacting to the signal and adding the distortion. It's all analog, all in one, in real time. This is something different. It's got, and I'm just guessing here because it's all digital, so this is all in code, it's got a function that determines the dynamics that you're playing, and if it's a hard attack, then it mixes in more of the overdrive signal. And if you're laying back a little bit, it's going to clean up the signal a little bit. Let's start by taking a look at this like simple C triad right here, this. And you can kind of hear, these are just 3 notes. If I play one by itself, it comes through clean-ish. The more notes I add, the more overdriven the signal gets. Right? And if I play all 3 at the same time, and I can clean that up a little bit by just lessening my playing dynamics, going a little bit softer. But the real difference comes in when I lower my guitar's volume knob. So let's... right around there. That's... I'm gonna go a little bit lower. This is like almost downright clean. And the volume level hasn't gone down all that much. Up. So I have all that control without touching the pedal just by adjusting the volume knob and my playing dynamics. That's a whole wide range of guitar overdrive sound you get right there. That's pretty impressive, I think. All right, let's talk about the big elephant in the room. This is a digital pedal. Aside from the Waza pedals and a few one-off remakes, Boss hasn't introduced a new analog pedal since 2001, and that was this, the Mega Distortion. Open up any Boss pedal introduced since then, and you're gonna find a board that's basically a life support system for a DSP, digital signal processor. In fact, this pedal, if you peek inside, says FZ5 DN2. Same board as the fuzz pedal, FZ5, just a different set of code loaded onto the chip. So yeah, it is a digital pedal. For one reason or another, it doesn't say COSM. I'm not sure if that's due to what specific algorithms are used, or if it's a marketing decision that Boss didn't want everything to say COSM on it, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. What do I think about it? I think it's a really, 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 really nice shade of orange. It's not quite the Boss DS1 distortion orange, and it's not quite the overdrive yellow. For a while, Boss was very clear that all distortions were orange and all overdrives were yellow. So it's one of those in-between pedals, like the power driver. It's actually like a little bit darker, and would you look at that sparkle? Look at that, it's like a bass boat. Man, that's nice to look at. But how do I think the pedal sounds? You know what? I think there's better overdrives out there and even better Boss overdrives. But I do know who this pedal would be fantastic for. There's a guy who used to show up at open mics, and great guy, fantastic guy, but he could never, ever, ever, for the life of him, figure out how to set up the volume levels on his amp. Every single week he would start a song. It always started with the same strumming pattern for the verse, and then some lyrics about how somebody else in the world doesn't understand him. And then at some point you'd see his foot going for that amp channel switcher button on the floor, and you just cringe up because you know he wants to be a rocker, and rockers use distortion, so here's way too much distortion and way too loud. Every single time. Something like the DynaDrive would be perfect for the player who just wants to add some overdrive dynamics to their sound, but without that big jump in volume that comes from switching pedals on and off or changing amp channels. I mean, even outside of the open mic guy, I've seen other local players struggle with keeping their volume levels consistent as they switch things on and off. So I think this is actually a pretty useful pedal. It's not a sound that you're going to fall in love with all by itself, but if you're playing live, especially if you're the only guitarist in your band, and especially if you're also doing the singing, being able to get a wide range of overdrive tones that you can ease into an effect just by what you're doing with your guitar, that's incredibly handy. Plus, I mean, the sparkle. Just look at that sparkle. My God, it's breathtaking. I guess the updated version of this pedal is the adaptive distortion. That's the newer version using the newer algorithms, and its whole thing is basing what it does not only on your playing dynamics, but where on the neck you are. I probably won't be picking up one of those unless I find a really good deal on one, so do not stay tuned for that review. But this guy can, as of mid-2021, be found for like 50-60 bucks. It ran from 2007 to 2014, so it is discontinued, and history will tell if that translates to rare or just old. But if you're looking for an overdrive pedal that you can set and forget, especially for live situations, I definitely recommend checking out the DynaDrive. If you're after something a little more conventional, maybe check out that OD3 overdrive, the SD1 Super overdrive, or maybe if you want to mix it up, there's the OS2 overdrive distortion. Video on this one in the works right now. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. You're just going to have to come back for more on Stompbox Breakdown.